A lot, and I mean a lot of people suggested I review the spear fight at the beginning of episode 7 of Wheel of Time. So Tigray and Mantir versus everybody except this guy. Let's do it. This fight is really interesting to me because it tells me a story, and I'm not sure if the story is what they intended, but it's really clever, and so I'm going to assume that it was. So come with me and let me explain. I watched episode 1 of Wheel of Time and wasn't really compelled to watch the rest of the series. It didn't really appeal, but I watched the start of episode 7 and you were not wrong. The spear fight is very cool. We will need to talk about being in labor, so this video could get a bit specific, but in the various clip videos that I watched of this scene, there were a lot of comments underneath like, it's completely unrealistic that a woman in labor is even standing, let alone fighting dudes. And I thought, well, it's not going to be common, no, but given the character and the specifics of the world building, it's possible. One of the things that really impressed me about this fight was how they managed to convey two different things to me without a lot of context at all. The first one is that Tigray is a total badass, like she's really good at fighting, she's very dangerous. But I also got the impression that things were happening to ensure that she wasn't dying. Having done some reading, I assume that that is the pattern intervening, as it were. Let me show you. We open with Tigray, aka Rand's mum, on a relatively quiet part of the battlefield, clearly having contractions, albeit brief ones. And here we must pause for a moment because when I first watched this, I did not understand why a 9 months pregnant woman would be on a battlefield in the first place, but when I read the book, Tam was also really confused about that, so I'm in good company. She finds a rock to lean against, but here comes dude number 1. She dodges, he tries to hit her again quite ineptly, but it is hard to see out the bottom of some helmets, like your peripheral vision down there is extremely restricted, so I'll give you that. She goes for his feet, then whacks him with the spear and knocks him off the rock. But here is a contraction, oh dearie me, but she's still watching him, she's just temporarily unable to do anything about him. But as soon as that contraction ends, she is going for him and we get some slow-mo. The fact that she comes straight for him without pausing demonstrates her determination and her ferocity, and it also puts momentum on her side. But here's the clever part. As the fight went on, I started to assume that the slow motion was being used deliberately to show us that something weird was going on. Like every time we have a pause or slow motion, it says to me that Tigray rolled really high because of her plot armor. If that isn't mixing your metaphors a little bit too much. Like, could this move work? Sure, I've seen 5-year-old girls knock over large men because they took them by surprise and they were off balance. This degree of success where you have enough momentum and you catch this man just right that he flies through the air with the greatest of ease and now you can stab him in the head, that's definite roll to critical hit stuff. And I love it, because it looks really cool. And I also love it because I feel like the slow-mo serves a dual purpose. First, it lets us slow right down and go, wow, look at her, she's so amazing and athletic. And second, it clues us into the fact that fate is quite literally on her side. But regardless of that slow motion bit that might have been an intervention from destiny itself, right off the bat you can see that Tigray is terrifying. She's fast and she's efficient and she keeps her head in combat even when her uterus is prepping for imminent baby expulsion. Onward. Second guy, this diagonal cut is a little bit awkward, but sure, she ducks underneath that and just stabs him straight in the chest. He's dead before he even knows it, and again, we do this in slow motion. I mean, there seems to be a weak seam right in the middle of the armor where it joins together, but either way, the fact that she has dispatched 2 men very swiftly speaks to how skilled she is as a fighter. I suppose one also has to bear in mind that while these soldiers will be used to fighting women, they might not be used to fighting women who are so visibly pregnant as she is, so that might give them cause for pause, but then again it might not. Carrying on, oh shoot, a guy about to throw a thing, let's put this guy in the way of him, and then we'll take the spear and chuck it right into his face. Good aim, and obviously the face is a vulnerable bit, so that works for me. And this doesn't come with a slow motion section, which changes things up a bit speed-wise, but is still clear enough that you can see what's going on. 2 other dudes up here. That's a cool focus pull. Is that called a focus pull? Either way, I like it. She grabs her 2 short spears and goes for them, and it's gonna be 2 versus 1. Oh, no, wait. 3 versus 1. That's never a fun time for the one. And so, even more so than before, she knows her only chance is to dispatch them as quickly as possible. While the fight is cut in a reasonably modern style with quite a lot of switching shots, it's pretty clear what's going on most of the time, which I really appreciate. The third guy joins in, and her immediate response is to attack the 2 men closest to her and then just run at the third guy, because that's how you get them all on the one side rather than having them flank you. And if they're all on one side of you, hopefully they're going to start getting in each other's way. And there is another pause moment, which I interpreted as a you probably should be dead, but the pattern is going to intervene just a little bit. Now this next section I particularly like because she's trying to get them down rather than killing them, because as we have seen, she can kill them quite efficiently, but it generally takes time, and while she's taking that time, one of her weapons is engaged, so you don't really want to be doing that. So she fights the third one and kills him, and then she's just about to go back, but contraction hits at what is probably the best time that it could have given the circumstances, but never a convenient time really, because there's just enough time for the contraction to finish before the other two guys get their acts together and get back at her. Another pausey moment for the pattern intervening, or just to give the audience a moment to catch their breaths, which is always important. More fighty. She gets this guy, but oh, that is not a good time for a contraction. Nope. She tries to bite this guy's hand. Fair, but ooh, ouchie. Yeah, but this too is part of the grand design. And it's such a great moment because this wound is deadly, or it's going to be, but she still has the wherewithal to headbutt him and kill him with his own knife, even though she's in so much pain and she's so gravely wounded. And then she takes his cloak, which I understood that reference. The fight is over by this point, but the scene is not, and she goes to the rock and takes the cloak with her, and I like that it's at this point that she takes off the head wrap so that we can see the red hair, because if you've been like, who is this woman and what's kind of going on, and you're like, oh, I get it. I get it. And then she's literally giving birth, and this dude, Rand's adopted dad, just sort of turns up and then helps her. But like childbirth plus major stab wound equals near instant death after the kid is born. Also, of course, now the kid is out and breathing, the pattern is no longer intervening to try and keep her alive. Why would it care about her now, as long as the dragon has been reborn and there's someone there to look after him? But dang, I love this scene. In the book, Tam finds the baby after Tigran is already dead, but as changes go, I really like this one. Because Tam is a good dude, we know this, and his instinctive compassion to someone in distress, even though that someone is his mortal enemy, really endears us to him. And it makes me warm to him even more than if he just found a baby on the hillside and decided to take it in. Though obviously that was also a really good thing to do. This is genuinely a moment, and the acting is excellent and the fight editing isn't too intrusive, and I just really enjoyed it, so thank you to the dozens of people who decided that I really needed to see it. You are correct, I thought it was great. Thank you, you should feel good about yourselves. The big thing that people seemed to be side-eyeing was how badass Tigran was, like, between contractions. Now I don't know if you've ever been in labour, but while everyone's different, I personally found that when the contractions were happening, at least up until shortly before the baby actually needed to come out, they weren't painless, but they were manageable. They were also pretty all-consuming though. Like, it wasn't really particularly possible to think very hard about anything else while a contraction was happening. And one of the details I like about this scene is that you can see this happening with Tigran. Particularly at the beginning, it's not that they're so overwhelmingly painful, though they aren't fun, it's just that they're absorbing basically all of her physical capabilities and like 90% of her attention. However, and this is something that I found as well, when the contractions weren't happening, everything just almost immediately switched back to normal. So while I was merely doing laps of my dining room table rather than spear fighting a bunch of dudes on a snowy mountain, the fact that she's at reasonable fighting capacity in between contractions is not so unrealistic. She's young, she's fit, the adrenaline is going. Yes, she's in a ridiculous situation, but the force, as it were, is literally on her side. At least until the dragon is, in fact, reborn. I don't know if the slow-mo is intended to suggest that things are happening, but that was what I took from it, and I really liked it as a touch. Good job, everyone. Thanks for watching.